What's going on, guys? It's GM85. It's Saturday, but we're working on Sunday's dinner already. Took about a week for most of this, so we're finally to the point where I'm gonna make Italian style Chicago beef at home, and everything is homemade from scratch. This is not every single ingredient in front of me. It's just the base of what we're working with and gonna need, guys. So we are using a large beef round roast. I believe this is a round. We're going to use that. We're going to not buy rolls. We're going to take this 4 cups of flour mixed with yeast, salt, a little bit of pepper, and make our own rolls. I already got my own homemade Grenada, homemade beef stock with a lot of reserved beef fat to sear this beef off when we need to get to that point. Herbs, dried onion powder, garlic powder, chili flakes, salt for the beef, whole peppercorns and rainbow, whole coriander, some dry rosemary, dried basil, some thyme, some oregano, smoked paprika. We're going to toast all these spices all together, guys. And we are going to grind them all up into a fine powder. And once we get the beef seared off, we're going to toast these spices up, toss them in with the beef mix. And we're well on our way to the races. I'm going to cook this probably around 225 or 250 in a Dutch oven, low and slow, for probably anywhere from 6 to 8 hours, guys. But this is the core of the recipe, guys, so we're going to get all this stuff back in the house, and we're going to start prepping this all up, guys, and kick back and just relax, guys. And I'll show you the bread technique in a fast manner. It takes 18 hours. Alright, guys, we got past the ingredients real quick. So this is just toasting off the spices here, guys. One thing I do hate about my kitchen is how small it is. That's why I constantly have to stack those pots and pans off to the side right there, guys. Mortar and pestle is your friend. I do not own a coffee grinder. I do most things like this. And most of this video footage is all going to be sped up, guys. This actually took like 4 different days of filming to actually do all of this, just because it's not hard to do. It's just a little involved. Making the spices, making the pickle brine for the Grenada, and just slow cooking the roast for an entire day and coming back having to cut it and all that stuff, guys. So take some time. Those spices were really good. Very common spices I always have, actually. Here you will see I'm just cleaning this up. I didn't need all this fat. I could have left it on, but I just cleaned it up a little bit. And that bowl is a mirepoix, which is unnecessary, but I prefer to do it whenever I make a large piece of meat like this. So I have a trivet for it to sit on top of, so it doesn't sit suspended in liquid. And I went heavy on the salt and on the pepper on this because there's no salt in the beef stock I made, guys. I have a quick short of that. Here's some really bad butcher tying skills. I could do this a lot better. Just this is a awkward shaped piece of meat to do this with, but it worked nonetheless, guys. And there we go. We're good to go there. And with the beef fat, a little bit of olive oil is also in there, guys. And this is the longest portion, is searing this off. This was like 15-20 minutes to get a good sear on all this. So I sped this whole thing up drastically here. So you're looking for a good sear on everything here. And there's going to be a point where you'll see the lid go in the pot and look like it goes in the oven. It does not. And here we go, going with some salt. My mirepoix tomato paste, untraditional for this also. So it's a mirepoix. And right there in it went some red wine to deglaze. So I'm treating this more like a beef stew, so to speak. So right there, I was just checking if the lid fit. This actually did go in the oven, and right here is what I'm talking about. I actually forgot to put in the spices that I toasted. I put the whole thing in the oven, and then I saw the mortar and pestle on the counter still. So I just pulled it out real quick and put it all back in. Little mistake, but not a huge deal by any means. So there we go. We're good to go. Now this goes in the oven. So we're going to go in the oven right there. Leave it alone. I left the oven at 225 for a total of 7.5 hours. There's my homemade bread mix. Incredibly sped up. That's actually 20 minutes worth of work to do all of that. Sped up to 30 seconds. And the bread for this is something I would change. That's my typical bread recipe. I would have changed it, so I'm just cutting my green peppers and my sweet peppers here. And anything you see, like if I'm pulling it off to the side, it's going into a scrap bin to go into my compost. I don't throw anything away. That includes the fat. The fat goes in a freezer bag for when I make beef stock and all that stuff also. So I don't waste, I waste very little food. So there we go, we're almost done with all that. And you're gonna see there's a point where there is some missing footage I lost somehow. And it's coming up in a second probably. So, salt and pepper those, a little olive oil toast, toss them in the oven until they're softened up. Here's where the missing footage was. I had footage of me untying the roast and carving it slowly with a chef's knife because I don't have a mandolin or a meat slicer. I did it all by hand, but I warmed the stock back up and strained it very, very well. So the footage missing was of just how the roast came out overall and how thin I did slice it. So that is the missing footage. Unfortunately, I did lose. I don't know how I lost it, but I did. So strain, and just so you know, that beef stock is beefy and spicy. I actually kept 2 quarts of it after, and I'm going to use it to make some spicy holiday beef dishes. And there's the sandwich assembly. So once again, the bread is a good bread recipe, but it wasn't the right one for this particular recipe. The bread's a little more of a harder texture, like a ciabatta almost, which is one of my preferences overall. And this sandwich could withstand a lot more time being dunked in the jus than I did, because the bread's so stout and hearty. It's not super soft, but it does take to the liquid very, very well. And I had family over the same day, and there was no homemade bread left and none of that, so we ended up using store-bought rolls the next day, unfortunately. The Grenada is very good. It's still sitting in the fridge. That stuff is nice and spicy. I used olive oil, so if you use olive oil, you got to pull it out and let it unsolidify. So where's the sandwich shot at? So, yeah, and I also cut the bread a little too deep. I wanted to kind of leave it like a half cut. I went a little too far with the bread knife on that one. Also would have used a bigger pot or a longer set of tongs, because I wanted just to dunk the whole thing in at once. So a taller pot would have helped. I don't know if that's traditional, but that looks damn good to me personally. Yep, that looks pretty good to me. Heavy on the meat. I went heavy on meat, light on the peppers, heavy on the Grenada, guys. This GM85's rendition of Chicago beef.